Hey, I'm here this morning with my lovely sister-in-law, an incredibly special person to me and my family. And I'm excited to share with everybody a little bit of the window into her life of what's happened over the past couple of years. Cassie, thank you so much for being willing to share your story. Take us through what the past couple of years have looked like for you, because it hasn't been anything easy.
Thank you. It's nice to be here chatting with you. I was living my best life, and I mother of two, great, healthy, active kids, a great husband, already a believer in the Lord. And we also had a successful business that my husband and I started, and I just felt like on top of the world, like a total hotshot. I was a real athlete. I went to nationals for women's ultimate frisbee. I was always one of the fastest people on the field, got into CrossFit later on, and I would just crush it. And I took a lot of pride in that, and just how much work I would put into myself, my life. I will say that despite me being at my peak, let's call it, I was never satisfied. I always had something to criticize about my body, about my career, about family life, whatever. And then the pandemic hit, and that wasn't even enough to deter me from my goals. I just pivoted, and, our business was still thriving through COVID. But then in June of 2020, so still early pandemic days, I got a mysterious pain in my shoulder. And I started seeing doctors over the next 2 months. They would be doing all these scans, MRIs of my shoulder just to figure out what it was, because they weren't really seeing anything. So it was just a mystery. And I just figured, I slipped a disc or something in my neck. And that was that. But then in August of 2020, so 2 months later, pain spread throughout my entire body. And it was really scary. And I went to the ER. And that's when they gave me a pre-diagnosis of you have leukemia. It really took a while to sink in what was happening and that I was dying. And what that feels like is like an abduction from my life. I was just picked up and thrown into this world of the hospital and the hospital room, and doctors constantly coming in and wearing a Johnny every day. And it was, and different beeps and sounds, and basically literally looking out at the world through a glass window, watching the seasons change. It's like a button was pushed and I was totally paralyzed. I've never been that sick before, and I hope to never be again. But the good news is that almost 2 years later, 2022, I'm in remission. I ended up having a bone marrow transplant, which saved my life. It was the most miserable thing I've ever experienced. Yeah, I'm here today because of that. And I'm still not anywhere near the physical shape I was before cancer, but that's something I've had to come to terms with. I'm on steroids, I'm on immunosuppressants, I'm still taking chemo. I go into the hospital once a month. So yeah, I take so many pills every day that I need to organize in a huge pill box. Yeah, it's my new reality.
Talk to us a little bit about what this struggle through the whole thing was like for you, at a soul level, at a heart level, at even a relationship with God level. How did this impact you as you struggled through it?
It was really intense. Things got so bad and so painful where I couldn't even, go to the bathroom by myself. And as a young 35-year-old, that's really humiliating. There's a shame aspect to illness. There's an identity crisis. Like, wait, I thought I was this. How am I a cancer patient now? Like the billboards you see of the bald people, like, how is that me now? I think I just started to dare to ask those questions and go down that path of like, why do I feel bad? Well, you feel bad because you have cancer. Well, why do I have cancer? No one knows. It's random. It's not in your genetic history. We don't know why. Okay, well, who's in charge here? Well, God's in charge here. Well, did God do this to me? I don't think so. That's not my former experience with God. But did God allow it? I mean, I guess in a way, if God's in charge. And so normally I'd expect, a spiritual teacher to be like, don't ask questions. Like that means you don't have faith. Like, but I was at such a low point, I couldn't help it. And I think that asking those questions and literally wrestling with God, like Jacob did, but in a more figurative way, is a good thing and an act of faith. I got angry. I still get angry sometimes. I got angry. I got so sad. But I told God that I was angry. I told God that I was sad, then that I didn't understand. And I knew somehow innately that God could handle that. I think God wanted me to be honest more than just put on a brave face. And so I did. I just went down that painful path of asking really tough questions about why me.
How did you change as a person? How did you change as a follower of God? How did your relationship with God even shift and change during this process?
So I've heard the phrase, use your grief as a spiritual practice. And well, I think that could look different for a lot of people. For me, it looked like being present in the mystery and in the questions, and not punishing myself for having them. I tried to analyze it and fight it for a long, long time, but eventually I came to, we don't know. I don't know. And I may never know. And what does that mean? If I don't have the answers, what does that mean? And just being still in the mystery. And I feel like that's an act of faith. That's what faith means. It was a type of letting go. I just stopped, and I was just still. And somehow I still felt God there. I got so used to being still in my grief and letting it happen that I also started seeing some amazing things of beauty in the world. So I feel like my tendency when I get depressed or down is to just run the other way. Like, nope, don't want to feel like that. But I allowed it to happen, and I went there. All of a sudden I started seeing like just a ray of light on the wall, and just like getting memorized by the beauty of it. Now that I'm home, like, I mean, just my like silly little herb garden, like, brings me so much joy. And I think that you just start to see that in the very simple things of life. Whereas before I was just achieving and wasn't happy until I'd achieved these like massive, great things. I get so much comfort and joy and love and all those good feelings from simple everyday life. And God is in that. I just have to be convinced. I'm convinced that God is in that somehow. I was struck by this Langston Hughes quote where he said, I prayed and prayed and prayed, but God didn't answer me until I started praying with my feet. And that really resonated really hard with me. And I started wanting to be an asset in the world. I do feel more attuned to suffering after having gone through something myself. And I'm thankful for that. I'm not thankful for cancer, obviously, but I am thankful that I'm just more aware of what humans go through and the suffering they go through, and being able to sympathize and have compassion for that. But it also motivated me to be a force for good in the world. How can I alleviate suffering for other people? We are the body. We are God's hands and feet. So I just
I'm compelled to help alleviate the suffering that I now see around me everywhere. Ultimately, there's no other way I'd rather live amidst all the suffering. I'd rather be on the side of love and following the wisdom of Jesus and what he endured in his lifetime.
The good news is transformation. The good news is that God transforms your heart, you know, in the deepest, darkest spaces. God is in the business of transforming you. You know, if your faith isn't about transformation, then what good is it? You know, what hope do any of us have?
Thank you so much for sharing everything that you have. This is a tremendous gift to all of us. So.
You're welcome.